All right, hello everyone. Thank you for that welcome. Thank you all for having me here. I'm so excited to be here. As Cheryl mentioned, my name is Steph Carlson. I'm actually from Stratford, Iowa, a small town near Webster City. Went to Iowa State University. I first grew up on my family's fair-to-finish hog farm, as well as row crops. And then, yes, I went on to Iowa State, studied animal science and ag business, graduated from there, worked for the Iowa pork producers for nearly 5 years before moving out to Washington, D.C. to work for our Iowa delegation. I've been with former Congressman David Young, Senator Chuck Grassley, and Senator Joni Ernst. And today I have the privilege of serving her and Iowa farmers and citizens alike as her Deputy Legislative Director and Policy Advisor, covering a wide variety of issues: agriculture, biofuels, energy, environment, public works, trade, transportation, amongst other issues. But I'm here today to talk to you about the 2023 Farm Bill that we've been working on as quickly as we can, maybe not as fast as we'd all like, but I'd like to start off with this quote from former President Dwight D. Eisenhower: "Farming looks mighty easy when your plow is a pencil and you're 1,000 miles from the cornfield." We often remind ourselves, and I like to remind others in Washington, D.C. of this because it's so disconnected often from the reality of what's going on here in Iowa. So a little bit of Farm Bill history. The federal government has a long history of intervening in agricultural markets, dating back almost to the birth of the United States as an independent nation, when import duties on sugar were introduced. Modern agriculture has its origins in the era of the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl, when President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed the very first Farm Bill, which was the Agricultural Adjustment Act of 1933. This was an integral component of President Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal policies, and his goal was to raise crop prices and incomes for millions of farm families who lived hard, scrabble lives and were genuinely poor. So as you can see, there's been 18 total farm bills here, and 9 decades later, the farmscape looks a lot different than it did in 1933. We use sophisticated technologies in raising our crops and livestock, and the farm bills have become much larger and complex legislative initiatives. They are subject to sunset provisions that require Congress to revisit agricultural policy periodically, typically every 5 years. The current Farm Bill, the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018, is set to expire on September 30, 2023. The House and Senate Ag Committees have been holding many hearings in Washington, D.C. and across the country to flush out the various issues that are impacting farmers in our rural communities. And as you are well aware, September 30 is coming up very quick, and Congress is not in session for the entire month of August. And so, having said that, we will not have a Farm Bill completed by September 30, 2023. But don't fear, that does not mean that all of our farm programs just shut off. In fact, many of them are able to continue under USDA authority through the end of this calendar year. And so as Congress does, we wait until the very last minute, and we like to extend pieces of legislation past their authorization. So I would suspect you may see an extension this fall, and hopefully we will pass a Farm Bill at the end of the calendar year before we leave for Christmas. That's my optimism for you. So since the last Farm Bill, we've seen a number of what we call black swan events. Catastrophic natural disasters and record flooding have led Congress to pass ad hoc disaster assistance. We have crop inventories decline on record prevent plant. Trade has been weaponized with China. You saw the market facilitation program or trade aid for farmers. The Phase 1 agreement boosts U.S. exports. We have had the COVID-19 pandemic. Thankfully, we've seemed to make our way out of that. But through it, there was coronavirus food assistance program. We saw our supply chains worsen, driving inflation. Russia invaded Ukraine, which caused a whole host of issues, obviously inflation in the energy and other farm markets and inputs, record high global food prices. The Black Sea Grain Initiative just ended, so what's next? And historic inflation affecting everyone across this country. Food prices soaring, the Federal Reserve has been hiking the rates, and we've seen bank failures. All of these things cause turmoil across the country for many different industries, but especially agriculture. So I'm going to go through a bit of a current economic outlook. Much of this information was provided and analyzed by the Senate Ag Republican Chief Economist, Dr. John Newton. We're going to go through the 2023 is the most expensive crop ever, how input costs are slow to decline, how commodity prices are falling, U.S. farm income is declining, U.S. farm sector debt is at a record high, and farm interest rates have risen at the fastest pace in 40 years. So here you'll see 2023 was the most expensive crop ever. Farm production expenses are projected to be record high in 2023 at $460 billion. This is up 28%, or $87 billion under this administration. So while diesel fuel and fertilizer have fallen slightly, they are still 60 to 130% higher than they were in January 2021. And other farm expenses, such as pesticides and maintenance and equipment and labor and rent, these things are all staying high or continuing to increase. So this all goes to show that this inflationary pressure on ag inputs is being felt by farmers. The net farm income is a broad measure of U.S. farm profits, and it was a record high in 2022, but because of equally record high inputs, farm profitability is expected to decline nearly 20%. And ask any farmer, all commodity prices may decline. Do inputs ever follow? Rarely, right? And so here you'll see that input costs are slow to decline, while a couple years ago in 2021, corn inputs were $911 per acre. It's down to $856 now, projected for 2024. And soybeans were $621, but they're projected only down to $613. Minimal decreases in input costs, while commodity prices are falling. Here you'll see the marketing year from 2022, 2023 to this next marketing year. You've got corn down 27%, soybean meal down 16.7%, soybeans down 12.7%, hogs are down, everything is seemingly down, maybe except for the cattle market. And so with low farm income, here you'll see what I was referring to earlier, declining 16%. And this shows the net farm income as well as government payments and net crop insurance indemnities. Farmers across the country are seeing these declines. Out west, they've drastically struggled with the drought the last couple of years, and certainly here in the heartland, we need rain too. With low farm income, the farm sector debt is at a record high. This shows the inflation-adjusted farm debt in billions of dollars, and it's meeting the nominal farm debt today at $535 billion. Farm interest rates have risen at the fastest pace in 40 years. So this shows non-real estate bank loans made to farmers and the federal funds rate at a percentage. As you'll see, just over the last year or so, it's increased about 5%. So 79% is the share of non-real estate loans with variable rates for 2023 Q1. The average USDA loan recipient will borrow $300,000 annually at an average return of less than 2%. So if you add in those black swan events we talked about, geopolitical risks, disasters, labor challenges, stagnant trade, and other. This all underscores the importance of the farm safety net. Without risk management tools in the Farm Bill, very few people could accept those terms and continue to farm. So I apologize for the doom and gloom economic outlook, but I'm still optimistic and confident in the American farmer today. So we have the Farm Bill players. The 2023 lay of the land here, we like to call these the four corners. So you've got on the top, Chairwoman of the Senate Ag Committee, Senator Debbie Stabenow, Democrat from Michigan. And then to the left, I should say, Ranking Member Senator John Bozeman, Republican from Arkansas. On the bottom, you've got Chairman G.T. Thompson, Republican from Pennsylvania. And then you've got Ranking Member of the House Ag Committee, Congressman David Scott, Democrat from Georgia. And then the House has taken a bit of an unusual measure this year and created a House Ag Task Force on Agriculture and Nutrition. And they've tapped Congressman Benny Thompson, Democrat from Mississippi, to lead that charge. Now Congressman David Scott has had some health challenges, and there's somewhat of a lack of confidence in his abilities, and that is why they have created a House Ag Task Force with Benny Thompson leading the charge there. So today, the House has a majority of Republicans, but it's a very slim majority. And the Senate has a majority of Democrats, but it's a very slim majority. And obviously, we've got Democrat President Joe Biden. So the lay of the land looks very similar to what we were dealing with going into the 2014 Farm Bill, where there was a Republican House, Democrat Senate, and Democrat administration. And so what this does is it obviously forces a lot of compromise and negotiation, because the Republicans in the House are going to want to make drastic cuts. As you may or may not have seen, they got out of town without passing the Ag Appropriations Bill at the end of July. And there was a lot of political fighting and consternation over what was to be included and what they wanted to cut out of that Ag Appropriations Bill. And that's a little bit of foresight into probably the difficulties they're going to have with passing a Farm Bill in the House. So there's a lot of fractions within the Republican Party, and you've got members that are clear to the right on one side and want to cut anything and everything, and then you've got more members in the middle who understand the importance of these farm safety programs. And so we'll see what comes out of the House. I may be a Senate snob, but I think whatever we do in the Senate will ultimately be the final Farm Bill. And so we've got the Democrat majority, but very slim in the Senate. And we will pass the Farm Bill in the Senate, and then it'll go to conference with whatever the House comes up with, and then it will go from there to President Biden's desk. And so, as I mentioned, fully expect us to not have the Farm Bill done in September, but the committee is actively drafting the Farm Bill. They've met with us, staffers, and provided updates throughout the process. They're going through the titles. Majority and minority staffers are. They're submitting language to USDA for technical assistance and feedback. They're submitting language to the Congressional Budget Office to figure out what the budget impacts are of these programs. And we're expecting to see some language from the committee to consider this fall with the goal of passing it out of committee and bringing it to the full Senate, obviously by the end of this calendar year. So what we see here is the first $1 trillion farm bill in U.S. history. This is based off of the Congressional Budget Office's 2023 May baseline projection. And this breakdown shows that of all farm bill spending, $1.5 trillion, SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, is projected to cost $1.2 trillion. And of the remaining piece of the pie, that is another $0.3 trillion that represents everything else in the Farm Bill, from crop insurance, commodity programs, conservation, trade, research, etc. And it's important to note that the 2018 Farm Bill cost $867 billion. So we're double what we did in the 2018 Farm Bill. It's just incredible, the amount of spending, and it's making it extremely difficult. And so the CBO, Congressional Budget Office, what they put out for their baseline is controlling. What they say is the rules that we're operating under. And it's the total amount of money that the Ag Committee has available to work with. And they set it against a 10-year baseline, and that's how they score these programs. And 2023 magnified the ad hoc and supplemental payments and gaps that we have in some of our farm support programs. And so trying to reason with and manage expectations is a substantial challenge for any farm bill, but especially now that we've seen the last few years, these ad hoc supplemental payments, they have set expectations at unreasonably and unachievably high levels, and those are not included in the CBO's baseline. So all that money is, if we're going to look at creating a disaster program or increase reference prices or anything to that matter, we've got to find that money somewhere else. And so under budget rules, any increase in a program requires an offset. So if we want to increase corn reference prices or soybean reference prices and say it costs $1 billion for 1 year, that means it's $10 billion for the price of the Farm Bill, and you've got to cut $10 billion from somewhere else. So as you can see under this pie chart, SNAP is the biggest pool, and it's causing a lot of consternation amongst members because SNAP is incredibly important and it's a safety net of its own right. But the amount of spending that's increased makes it really difficult to add any funding to any other of the important programs that we need. And so it creates this zero-sum dynamic in politics where in order to increase something for Iowa farmers, it may make an enemy out of an ally with a southern farmer who wants an increase for their rice and cotton. And so while the 2023 Farm Bill reauthorization was largely unscathed from the debt limit deal, politics are perilous, and with expectations a bit out of line, budget constraints, and political realities, we've got a difficult road to navigate here between now and the end of the year. But there's no shortage of things that we need to work on. We need to find and develop new foreign markets. This shows our trade imbalance, negative $17 billion. We're actually importing more ag goods than exports. You shouldn't be doing that. Our U.S. public sector agriculture research and development is stagnant. It has not increased in 20 years, but yet you see our competitors continue to increase their research dollars. China, we're falling behind, and it's not a good thing. The positive note is our farmers continue to produce more and more without increasing their inputs. So productivity continues to rise, and that's sustainability. Farmers are doing more with less, and that's a good message that we need to continue to share. A major topic of discussion lately has been who owns our U.S. farmland. And so Canada is the largest foreign owner of farmland, and that's largely timber and forest land. Then you've got the Netherlands, Italy, the UK, some of our European allies. That's okay. What's most concerning is the 384,000 acres that China owns, about 1% of our foreign land. And it's significantly increased over the last 10 years. And what they're doing is strategically targeting land near our U.S. military installations. You may or may not have seen the recent news where they bought a chunk of ground up in North Dakota near the Grand Forks U.S. Air Force Base. And they're intending to build a grain mill there. And it's no surprise that China wants to be near our military installations, specifically Air Force installations and telecommunication nodes. And so there's been a lot of efforts through the National Defense Authorization Act that just passed the end of July. There was a measure included in there to update what we call the Committee on Foreign Investment in the U.S. so that there's more strict recognition of what China's investments are. And we have other ongoing efforts through the Farm Bill to modernize and update the Ag Foreign Investment Disclosure Act, which is USDA's role in tracking and reviewing and analyzing the ag foreign ownership. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So trade and agriculture research are important because the world's population is growing. Expected 2.3 billion additional people by 2050, and it's all in Africa, primarily. And so the world's farmers need to grow 70% more food. There's been a government-wide approach to climate and conservation, and these are the projected outlays for the programs within the Farm Bill. The Conservation Reserve Program is the largest, the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, Conservation Stewardship Program, etc. These are very popular programs, and we'll continue to work through these as we work through the Farm Bill. But I do want to note here on the next slide that U.S. agriculture's climate footprint is small. We get targeted and have a bad rep sometimes, but we are making a lot of improvements in sustainability and doing our part. But it's important to note that transportation, electricity, industrial, and commercial industries are all larger than agriculture. And so this is broke down for agriculture. Soil management is 4.5%, beef production is 2.2%, milk production 1.3%, pork production 0.4%. So the elephant in the Farm Bill is SNAP, with 81% of the funding going towards nutrition. SNAP has grown 84% since the 2018 Farm Bill. And so you've seen this steady rise and increase, and really over COVID, there was a strong amount of money and need for food assistance. The issue is that SNAP and what we call the Thrifty Food Plan, which is USDA's calculator for determining what benefits should go to a family of four, has outpaced inflation significantly. And this is USDA's authority that they took to increase that calculator. And it's extremely high, even amongst the consumer price index food at home cost. And so this is what's causing that double or 80% increase, I should say, in SNAP funding. And so here's a county level SNAP participation rate map that shows where the pockets of high SNAP use are located. And I think this map is important to show because as we talk about the Farm Bill often, people will say, well, it's not actually the Farm Bill, it's the Nutrition Bill. And that's true, but we have to keep the farm and nutrition together because the farm country in the middle of the United States is not the strongest SNAP recipients. And so if we separated these two out, you would get a SNAP bill every single time, but you wouldn't get a Farm Bill because the population and the members of Congress who care about the farm aren't widespread like SNAP. Another issue that we just saw come out of COVID, and these numbers were just released in June of 2022, is the SNAP payment error rate. And so these almost doubled. It used to be 6%. And the SNAP payments are administered by the state agencies, and they determine who is eligible for SNAP and how much money should be going to these recipients. The issue here is this is the combined percentage of overpayments and underpayments, and this is an unchecked error that is not, there is no penalty for the states at this time. And so this is another issue that if we are going to maintain the bipartisan support and defense of SNAP as an important safety net for those that most need it, then it has to be run effectively and efficiently with robust integrity. And so I expect this is something that we will be looking at in the nutrition title. Mentioned on that previous county level map, this is the Farm Bill and nutrition as the great compromise. So this shows the economic output of agriculture. Dark red is greater than 30 billion versus where the people that turn out to vote. And again, the farm heavy country is not where the population in this country are. And so we've got to keep nutrition and farm programs together in order to get farm programs passed as a farm bill. This is just the political reality that we're dealing with. So food security is national security. This is a pie chart that shows the total mandatory and discretionary spending across the entire federal government. So Social Security is the highest. Medicare and Medicaid follow that. Defense, 12%. So I like to remind my friends that food and farm programs make up 2.4%. We're not fixing our government's debt problem on the farm bill. And so within that 2.4%, 2% is nutrition, 0.4% is farm support programs. And so I think it's important that we share this with our friends when we're talking about any increase in spending and funding, that again, we're not the problem. Certainly every agency in DC can be run more effective and efficient, and no one is absent of that. But farm and nutrition programs are just a sliver of what the US government spends our money, taxpayer money on. So I'm going to run through the Farm Bill by title. In case you're all not aware, the 2018 Farm Bill had 12 titles that made it up. And so we start with Title 1, which is commodities. This provides farm payments when crop prices or revenues decline for major commodity crops, including corn, soybeans, and others. There's disaster programs to help livestock manage production losses due to natural disasters, and margin insurance for dairy, marketing quotas, minimum price guarantees, etc. So Title 1 is really the beast of, besides Title 4, which is nutrition, Title 1 is the beast of the negotiations in the Farm Bill. And it is, as I kind of alluded to earlier, more regional than it is necessarily party, and supporting the Midwest corn and soybean farmers versus supporting the Southern rice, cotton, peanut farmers, and determining who deserves what based off of market conditions and the budget constraints that we're dealing with. Also important to note who is leading the committees, right? We've got an Arkansas Republican on the Senate Ag Committee, and we've got a Michigan Democrat chairwoman, and then over on the House side, you've got a Pennsylvania Republican chairman, and you've got a Southern Georgia Democrat ranking member. And so amongst our Midwest friends, Republican and Democrat, we have to stick together to make sure that our farmers get the best end of the deal that we can out of the Farm Bill. Title 2, conservation, encourages environmental stewardship of farmlands, improved management practices through the various working lands programs, land retirements, easement programs, etc. And as that previous slide indicated, through the Inflation Reduction Act, there's a major boost of money that has gone towards conservation. And Chairwoman Stabenow has indicated that that is all to stay in conservation. Title 3 is trade. So this supports U.S. agricultural export programs and export guarantee programs, as well as international food aid programs and World Trade Organization obligations. Title 4 provides nutrition assistance for those low-income households through the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, as well as some emergency food assistance programs and food distribution in schools. Title 5 is credit. Here we have some direct government loans to farmers and ranchers, guarantees on private lender loans, eligibility rules and policies. Title 6 is rural development. So this supports a wide range of rural business and community development programs, which is really important for all of our Main Street businesses and rural broadband, renewable programs that are very popular. Title 7 is research and extension. So this is to support ag research and extension at our land-grant universities like Iowa State and other, to help improve our farmers' efficiency and create new innovative products. Title 8 is forestry, which supports forestry management programs. Title 9 is energy. So here is the development of farm and community renewable energy systems like the popular REAP program. Also facilitates the production, marketing, and processing of biofuels and biofuel feedstocks. Title 10 is horticulture. This is the specialty crop title, fruits, vegetables, nuts, market promotion, as well as this deals with plants, pesticide, disease prevention, and organic crops. Title 11 is crop insurance, and then Title 12 is the miscellaneous title, which includes livestock and poultry, as well as some of the unique limited resource socially disadvantaged farmer programs that have been created recently. So here is a bit of a snapshot of Senator Joni Ernst's priorities as we look at the 2023 Farm Bill. I have them organized into themes or buckets of food security, rural prosperity, and conservation of land and money. And so within food security, the first one is the Farmland Act. And this is our bill that's really comprehensive, and it's with Chairwoman Debbie Stabenow to update and modernize the Ag Foreign Investment Disclosure Act. And so within this, we provide updates to USDA and additional funding so that they can improve their resources. So they currently have only 3 individuals that work within their Homeland Security Office within USDA, and their voluntary disclosure of who owns farmland is a paper system. It's incredible. I mean, they have boxes of papers at USDA, and we want that to be an online, publicly available database. We want there to be much more reports and oversight and analysis done on the national security threats of who owns our farmland, who's trying to buy our agricultural assets. And we want to give USDA some more authority to investigate these bad actors. And so I'm really hopeful that this has a chance to be successful in the Farm Bill because we've worked so closely with USDA and Chairwoman Debbie Stabenow. The next one is the Animal Disease and Disaster Prevention, Surveillance, and Rapid Response Act. It's a mouthful, and that title alone tells you what this bill does. And so this is a 3-legged animal disease and health prevention bill that provides funding for the National Animal Disease Preparedness and Response Program, the vaccine bank and countermeasures, as well as the National Animal Health Lab Network. So all 3 of these play an important role and have shown their importance as we've dealt with the bird flu in Iowa, as we've dealt with COVID, as we are trying our hardest to prevent foot and mouth disease or African swine fever. Those would be devastating to the state, to our livestock producers, to our grain farmers, and all of our related businesses. The Beagle Brigade Act is a fun one, but it's just to authorize the National Dog Detector Training Center, where they train the beagles that you see at the airports, at the port of entries, borders, to sniff out the goods that are coming in to make sure we're not bringing in anything we're not supposed to that might bring disease. The EATS Act is ending agricultural trade suppression, and so this is a federal preemption that states cannot have jurisdiction over agricultural production in other states. So this is directly in response to California's Prop 12, where they're trying to dictate the pork production in Iowa in order to sell bacon and pork chops into California. Rural prosperity, this is all about maintaining rural prosperity, supporting our young and beginning farmers and our rural communities. And so The first one I have here is Expanding Agricultural Exports Act, and this is related to the Market Access Program and Foreign Market Development, which is a very successful cost share program with our commodity groups to go out and promote our ag goods across the world. And so we've got that bill. Farmers First is to build off of Senator Ernst's efforts in the 2018 Farm Bill, which reauthorized the Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network. And this is all about providing the critical mental health resources that are needed to our farmers in rural communities. Biomanufacturing and Jobs Act is some updates to improve the USDA Bio-Preferred program. And biofuels, no doubt Iowa is the undisputed leader. But what else can we do with our corn and soy? There's a whole host of new innovative products that are really exciting, and the government is procuring products every day, and we think that they should consider our American-grown, American-made bio products instead of buying from China and other places. Expanding local meat processing is removing some regulatory red tape that exists currently in the Packers and Stockyards Act. So this will allow our livestock auction owners to invest in small packing plants. This will improve competition and allow for more consumer access and hopefully lower cost. The Expanding Child Care in Rural America Act deals with those rural development programs that already exist, and it just adds child care as an eligibility for what those rural development programs can be used on. And this is one of Senator Ernst's big priorities that we hear across the state, how difficult it is to find child care. And that's important to keep our young farmers and families in these rural communities. And the last one is under rural prosperity is Modernizing Agricultural Manufacturing Bonds Act, which I worked very closely with Tammy and the Iowa Finance Authority, and I'm really glad to say we were able to get that introduced just the last week of July. And so Iowa is the leading state for first-time farmer bonds, otherwise known as Aggie bonds. And this is tax-exempt money that comes through the Iowa Finance Authority to the private lenders. And we updated some things in this program so that more Iowa farmers could be eligible and take advantage of this money. Then we get to conservation of land and money. So conservation of land is extremely important. We know here in Iowa that we're continuing to improve our water quality and soil health. And we have a bill that we just introduced called Streamlining the Conservation Practice Standards Act. And so this is within the USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service to make a clear, standardized process for stakeholders to engage with NRCS on new innovative products, technologies, practices, so that they can be eligible for those cost share dollars that we talked about with EQIP, CSP, RCPP, and others. We've got the Emergency Watershed Program Floodplain Easement Restoration Act, which is a technical fix to allow floodplain easements to be restored to their hydrologic function in those emergency watershed programs. The Snapback and Accurate Snap Payments Act we have not introduced yet, but we're looking to do this in the fall, and that deals with the state's improper payment error rates and just working to ensure that there's an incentive for the states to improve their administrative processes. We're not trying to cut any of the SNAP funding. We just want to make sure that the agencies are effective and efficient with their payments. And then the COST Act is transparency that shows what the cost for any federal program is to the taxpayer. And so, very straightforward. With that, I'll open it up about a few minutes. I think if anyone has any questions, I appreciate all of your attention and your work for Iowa agriculture. It's super important.